So today I want to have a fun discussion about ancient Greece, right? And I make quite a lot of conversations about ancient Greece. And the reason is because, in general, I challenge people's views about the most important things in life. And so if I make a conversation about ancient Greece, it seems to the person as though we are talking about something that is very far removed, right? Now, I mentioned that I consider ancient Greece to be very important, but it has the feeling that we're talking about something that's removed, right? That we're just discussing. So here's how I get into it, right? I bring up the idea of aliens, right? There's all this speculation, when are we ever going to discover alien life, right? And me being into Platonism, I'm not going to be impressed with aliens until we find aliens that can speak, right, about how to live well. Because it seems to me that, in general, speaking, right, with symbolic speech like we do is the highest form of communication, right? There's nothing really more sophisticated than that, right? Like, even if you have aliens that communicate with telekinesis, they'll still do it with some sort of symbolic language, right? It's like, even if we're reading each other's minds, we're still reading symbols. So that's pretty much as high as it gets, and that's where we are. So that's pretty cool. But let's say they find, some single-cell organisms on Jupiter or something, right? I find that completely uninteresting, right? Not interested at all. Let's say they find some dogs over there on Venus, right? Dogs are good for, for company, but they're not really satisfying in terms of life, right? So what I tell people is that there is actually a way that we can study aliens like this, right? That communicate with speech, right? And that's the ancient Greeks, right? Because they left so much material for us to consider. So the ancient Greeks are the closest that we can get to studying literal aliens, right? Obviously, they're not literal aliens, but they might as well be aliens, right? They had very different, their word is tropoi, right? They had very different ways than we do, right? They're like an alien race, okay? What's important to us was not really what's important to them, right? They might as well have been, raised on the other side of the galaxy, and someone will say to me, oh, but the Greeks had so much influence on us, right? And that's true, but, it's like the telephone game, right? The influence is distorted, after a few steps, and, it's not exactly recognizable to the ancient Greeks, in my opinion. So a lot of times what people will say is like, well, why do I care what the ancient Greeks think, right? Like, maybe my alien story isn't enough for them, and I say to them, well, we should care what they think just because they were so different. Isn't that what we want? Do we want different points of view? Don't we want to meet different people? Don't we want to celebrate diversity? Well, there's nothing more diverse than getting the ancient Greeks in here, right? Hashtag ancient Greek lives matter, right? So the guy who, in the 20th century, restarted the tradition of considering the ancient Greeks was this guy right here, Leo Strauss, right? That's Leo Strauss right there. I got into Leo Strauss about 3.5 years ago. I have been studying ancient Greece mainly since then. I study a lot of things, but that's been probably the main thing. I've done a lot of studying piano, actually, also. And I'm competent, but I'm no expert, right? I can make ancient Greece very interesting, but I learn from experts. That's how I know that I'm not an expert. And, really I should learn ancient Greek, right? That's kind of a monumental task. I'll hopefully get to it one of these days. And it just so happens that I live on the same block as a used bookstore that has a dollar rack. Okay, so once or twice a week I walk by and they have the dollar racks right outside. I'm able to peruse the dollar rack. So I have tons of books. I'm not going to show you them all right now. They're right over there, but I just sort of went through them all and pulled out a bunch of ancient Greek books I want to show you. So we're gonna hit this. Now, I left some out, I use some discipline. We're not going to look at all of my books related to ancient Greece. I just want to give you an idea of what it's like to really be interested in a subject and study it. All right, so first of all, I'm going to show you these two books from Leo Strauss. Right, you see this? How does this work? Right here. Leo Strauss, The City and Man, right? So this book is really an analysis from Leo Strauss of Plato and Aristotle. Right, he has two lengthy chapters about them, and there's also one of Thucydides. And Leo Strauss's intros are always very important and very general. And then there's this other book from Leo Strauss. This is really his most famous book right here. See it? Natural Right and History. This is really more generally about his philosophical system, but there's quite a lot about Plato and Aristotle in here that, you know, it really needs to be read. These are two essential books from Leo Strauss. He has a lot of them. Wonderful writer. I know, I can hear all the people right now screaming, neocon, 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 right? The war in Iraq. So this is the main book I use sort of for history. Right? It's called, you see here, Republics, Ancient and Modern. It's volume 1. Does this show up? The Ancien Regime in Ancient Greece. Right? You see Paul Ray right there? Paul Ray is a West Coast Straussian. He's currently a professor at Hillsdale College, but when this came out, I think he was at the University of Tulsa. Currently, he's at Hillsdale College. Go to Amazon. You'll see that this book is highly acclaimed. Very serious, and it's kind of about history, but really it's more about the word I used earlier, tropoi, right, which is the Greek word for ways, the ways of the people. If you want to know what it was like living in an alien society, this is an important book right here. All right, Paul Ray, Republics, Ancient and Modern. It's just a wonderful book. I just love that book. All right, and then here's the big deal. I'm going to try not to spend too much time on this. This is the big deal right here. Plato's Republic. You got to get the Alan Bloom translation. Okay? Deal with my screen a little bit right here. All right. So this is Plato's Republic, the Alan Bloom translation. Now, in general, let me just bring this up right now. What you want from your classic works that you're getting is, what am I looking for here? Like in the back, this happens to have footnotes. These are footnotes that I'm showing you right here. These are the footnotes in the back. If you are able to get a copy of a classic or an ancient work with footnotes, do it. It's worth it. You want the footnotes. Okay? It's important. Okay? And then when you're reading these things, I think it's very important to go through. Can you see this here? What are we looking at? Right here. You see how, zooming out a little bit, you see how I have the pages all written in with notes in the margins? Let's look over here. It's kind of tough to look at. We're not going to do this with all my books. I just want to give you an idea. Not so much on that side. Where's another good page to look at? Maybe this one will show up better. You see? You see? We gotta write in the margins here, folks. That's how you can review more easily. Right? It's not enough to read these books one time. You gotta write in the margins. You gotta review. Okay? These are serious books. That's Plato's Republic. Right? And if you get a version and it has commentary and it takes too long before you find out that the actual name of it is the Politeia, then you should probably just get the Alan Bloom version, because that tells you, I think it's the first footnote. Now, people mess up when they begin to read Plato, though, because they begin with Plato's Republic because it's his most famous work, it's his greatest work, etc. But no. What you want to begin with is something like this. This is 4 texts on Socrates. There's 3 by Plato. There's 1 by Aristophanes, The Clouds. You can see in here by Thomas G. West and his wife, Grace West. I don't know if they're both at Hillsdale College now, but Thomas West is at Hillsdale College. He's a West Coast Straussian. And this one, the essential one to read is the Apology of Socrates, right? That's Plato's account of Socrates' trial where he's condemned to death. Okay? So there's that. But really you should just read all of them in this book because they're very short, right? Like Plato's Republic is just, it's pretty sizable. A lot of this is commentary, honestly. But Plato's Republic is a pretty sizable book. There's 4 writings in this small book right here. Right? You see the difference? Right? There's 4 writings in this one. And there's commentary. So they're shorter. It's much easier to get into Plato if you begin with shorter writings. I tell this to people all the time. So you just want to just read it through. You know, it's Plato's Euthyphro, the Crito, the Apology, and then Aristophanes' Clouds. Now this one right here, I'm just going to show it to you real quick. This is the Phaedo. Right, the subtitle of this one is On the Soul. Someone gave it that. I don't know who. This is Plato's account of Socrates' death scene. Right? But here's what I have to say about this. It's very important to read the beginning and the end of this one because it's Socrates' death scene. But the middle of it is just a bunch of discussion on the soul, and you might say, oh, well, that sounds interesting, especially once you understand that the Greek word for soul is psyche, and that it's when it comes to discussion of the soul that we really need to be comparing it to our modern ideas of psychology. But actually, this is one of Plato's earlier works, and he has this later work over here called The Republic. That's how we know it. And that's where he has a serious discussion of the soul, right? So just stick to his discussion of the soul in The Republic. That's my verdict here. I got two here from Plato. You see them? The Gorgias in front, and then behind it, Protagoras and Meno. The Meno's okay. I like it, but Gorgias and Protagoras are very important to me. These are all earlier works from Plato, right? So stop this from bouncing or something. It's like a bouncy house. These are earlier works from Plato, and with these ones, I could discuss them endlessly, but what happens is I'll explain, something important from them to someone, and they're like, oh, wow. Plato wrote that 2,500 years ago, and then I come in for the kill. I say, and you know what? These books, these writings are not nearly even Plato's greatest writing. Right? Plato's Republic is his greatest writing. Right? It's just far greater than his other writings. His other writings are just really great too. But Plato's Republic, that's the one. And then they get a glimpse of how great Plato really is, because they've just heard these stories about all these great ideas that Plato has, and I've just told them, hey, Plato's Republic is just far better. Now this one right here, I don't know how people can get this one. I think it's out of print, but I got it at my used bookstore. This one has really been a big deal for me. You see it says, it's Cornford's Plato's Theory of Knowledge, right? So in here, let me get the table of contents going or something. We'll just look at the inside cover here. You see it's the Theaetetus and the Sophist of Plato, right? So these two works, Theaetetus and Sophist, they are from later in Plato's career, right? So you get to see how he's developed somewhat. Now, I don't want to get into commenting on that because I have idiosyncratic views, but the reason why this is so great is because of the commentary. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Be sure to get footnotes. Be sure to get commentary. All right, these are tough things to read. The Theaetetus and the Sophist, especially, those are some tough writings. And there's so much commentary in here; it's invaluable. This book is just I love this book. And so one of the things that I learned from this book is about the next book. I haven't gotten to read this one yet. I go through a lot of footnotes, like I say, and a lot of times this is referenced. So I've read a lot from Plato's Statesman, but the Statesman is the one that Plato wrote after the Sophist, right? And the Sophist is a type of person, is someone who pretends to have wisdom or imitates wisdom that's not, or knowledge. I'm not going to review the book right now. It's something like that. And then there's the Statesman, and what I read in all that commentary is that one of the things that's speculated on is that maybe Plato had planned it out to be a series, and next was going to be the philosopher. But that's just speculation. Oh, you know what? I forgot to grab one. I'm going to deal with that in a minute. So this right here, what are you looking at? Plato, it's the Phaedrus, and then also the letters 7 and 8. So the Phaedrus is very important. That's one of them where he discusses love. But he especially discusses writing per se, right? This is where you'll find Plato's philosophy about writing, and his writings are so strange because he's never in any of them, except for letters 7 and 8, right? And the authenticity of those is often doubted. But Leo Strauss seems to accept them. And it's where we get some of the biographical details about Plato. Like, I think it's, he tried to rule Syracuse or something like that. I haven't gotten to read those either. You know, I'm not an expert. I'm just competent. And I'm a Straussian. So let me switch this off real quick, and I'm going to... oh, wait, no, you know what? I found it right here. It's just sticking out. All right. The Symposium by Plato, right? This is probably Plato's second or third most widely read dialogue. It's pretty good. It's his dialogue about love, right? And I'll do my quick little story about it. There's 4 people at a party, I think there were 3, and Socrates shows up last, and they all take turns explaining their views about love, right? So, and one of them stands up and, I think love is this, and the next one, I think love is that. And then Socrates stands up, he's last, and he says, well, I'm going to tell you what my teacher, Diotima of Mantinea, taught me. So he's the only one who doesn't share his own views, and when I read that, I think I started crying. I was on the bus, but you know, I have my own views, but my view is that Plato has the championship belt, along with Aristotle. So I prefer to tell people Plato's views, right? Because, you know, they have the belts. All right. Speaking of Aristotle, we're almost through here. What are we looking at here? Nicomachean Ethics. Nicomachean Ethics. Now, I should have reviewed or something. I don't really care what Nicomachus' relation was to Aristotle. Right? That's kind of trivial. But I think he was Aristotle's son. You can look it up. So, the Nicomachean Ethics, it's, this book, you know, it rivals Plato's Republic. Right? Because certainly Aristotle rivals Plato. And now here's the thing. Plato's writings were almost all dialogues among people other than Plato, and especially featuring Socrates, right? So Plato's writings are very strange, but they're deliberate. Right? He meant for them to be coherent wholes, but Aristotle's writings, my view, the view that I accept anyway, and a lot of people accept this view, is that these were not meant to be complete writings. Right? These were notes that, you know, from lectures that were collected. And actually, this is the book where at some point in here it refers to, you know, and of course you know about our popular writings for a popular audience, right? So, in other words, it's distinguishing, you know, whoever compiled this, we talk about that person as Aristotle. Aristotle distinguishes the Nicomachean Ethics from his writings for an audience. So it's very important. And it's just that book is just, oh, it's just very important. It's just awesome. See it? Aristotle's Politics. Right? Now, I don't really like this translation that much. It kind of blows hot and cold. Wonderful, wonderful stuff in this book. A lot of people will say, oh, you know, you can't take that seriously because, you know, Aristotle supports slavery. And it's like, look at my True Deal Tom videos. I have a video about Aristotle and slavery, okay? Right here. You see this one? This is another copy of the Politics because I don't like that other translation that I showed you so much. I'm kind of hot and cold on it. So I have a second translation because I'd like to see things translated by a couple different people. And I actually have a third translation in a digital copy on my computer that I can't really show you. That one's by Benjamin Jowett. Then we have right here, where are we looking? Aristotle's Physics. I got into this a little bit because Leo Strauss suggests that you should do it at one point in Natural Right and History, but I got into it as much as he suggested, and it seemed as though what was important was covered in Aristotle's later work, which I've read at much more length, which is the Metaphysics. Right? So here we have the Physics. Now, physics is the Greek word for nature. Or it's physis or physis, something like that. And then we have right here, this is the Metaphysics from Aristotle, right? And metaphysics is Greek for after nature. Now, it's the reason why they have these names is simply because this one was written after this one. That's why this is after physics. It doesn't mean after nature in the sense that, like, oh, there's the material world and then the ideas come after that. That is not what it means, but a lot of people take it to mean that. It's just the proper name. Okay, don't read too much into it. Right? I'll make a video about Leo Strauss's metaphysics, but it's completely different than how people think of metaphysics typically. I'm not going to cover it here, though. This book, this is a gem right here. Aristotle's Poetics. I got a sticky note on there. Aristotle's Poetics. This book is great. When you read this book, you get a sense of Greek life, right? And you get a sense of relating to them, because the impression you get from reading this book is that Aristotle's just like us, that he's seen, several thousand movies and he's spent his whole life reflecting on them, right? This book, if you want to look at it that way, this book reads like an instruction manual on how to watch movies. But it's 2,500 years old. So people often talk about Aristotle's rhetoric. I got into this. I should get back into it, but I was expecting something from it, and I came to realize that what I wanted from it, I got from Aristotle's Poetics, so I didn't really stick to that too much. Now, this one right here, Aristotle, De Anima. De Anima is Latin, right? It means something like on the soul. The Greek word for soul is psyche. And Aristotle's view of the soul is quite different from Plato's. Aristotle has a much more general view. He would say that, like, I don't want to get into that, but let me just point out that in this other writing from Aristotle, which I got right here, the Nicomachean Ethics, his discussion of the soul in this writing is more like Plato's discussion, whereas and it's really limited to a discussion of the human soul, right? The Nicomachean Ethics discussion, right? Which is really what's important. And then in De Anima, he says that quite a lot more than just humans have souls, right? And there are different kinds of souls. Like, it's not as though everything with a soul, like, it is going to heaven or something, right? Like I think plants have souls for Aristotle, but they have plant souls, right? So it's like, who cares? You stick to Plato. All right, and then you want something like this. I got a bunch of books like this because they're always popping up there on the dollar rack, right? One way that I explain it to people, just in a simplistic way, is I tell them that there's two ways to be into ancient Greece, right? You either prefer the philosophers or the poets, right? So these are the poets. Right? Everyone thinks of Homer, and it's like, honestly, I would be well advised to get into Homer. I haven't done that, or Hesiod. Just third-hand stuff. I've read quite a lot about it, but not directly. So I don't know if you can get a good enough look here. Not really. The important authors are Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Right? And Aeschylus, his Oresteia, is where you will find what is, to my knowledge, the classic account of Apollo. And Euripides, his Bacchae, is where you'll find the classic account of the god Dionysus. And Sophocles gives us Oedipus Rex, which is just a wonderful, wonderful play. And by the way, Oedipus Rex is the main play that's analyzed in this Aristotle's Poetics. So that's a wonderful look at how long Aristotle's Poetics is, right? someone just slapped it together, and we have it's just this little baby writing, and it's wonderful. You know, you could do it in a weekend. Oedipus Rex and the Poetics. Oh, you got your weekend made. All right. The complete plays of Aristophanes. Now, Aristophanes is sort of considered to be the only comic poet, or at least the only comic poet that, you know, has come down to us from that era. Now, the next generation and 2 generations later, there were a few others, but Aristophanes was in the same generation as Socrates. They were sort of rivals. Right? Aristophanes didn't like Socrates, and Plato didn't like Aristophanes, and what happened was Plato, you know, created this whole drama between philosophy and poetry. Right? Not because he needed to create it. I mean, it was already there because the poets got Socrates killed. So it's very important to consider Aristophanes. Spike Lee recently made one of his plays into a movie called Chirac. So that's interesting. Right? Lysistrata became Chirac. And anything else I want to say about Aristophanes? I talk about ancient Greece in a lot of these videos, so I don't want to say so many things. So another one I have is Herodotus, the Histories. Right? This one's pretty important. I haven't really gotten to go through it that much, but I do when I'm reading, you know, other ancient Greek books. A lot of times they will say, "Oh, you can, you know, this refers to this line from Herodotus," and that reminds me, all these books that I've shown you, I didn't make a point to mention this, although I had meant to. They all feature. Can you see here? You see how in the margins, you see they have line numbers in the margins. If you're going to get a classic or ancient work, make sure it has line numbers, because these books, they refer to each other. They refer to each other, dog. You gotta have the line numbers, you gotta have the footnotes and the commentary, and you gotta read them, and you gotta write in there, and you gotta review it, and it's worth it. I got 2 more. This book's really popular. From Camille Paglia, Sexual Personae. I'm quite a way through it. One of the early chapters is about ancient Greece. It's about Apollo and Dionysus. And that's where most people, I think, get introduced to the idea of Apollo and Dionysus. And it has quite a lot of great information about ancient Greece. This book does. For instance, it mentions that the ancient Greeks had the same word for moon, month, and menses, right? And that word for all those things was menses. You get that from Sexual Personae. Now, the whole idea of the opposition between Apollo and Dionysus in this book, right, from Camille Paglia, was really popularized or reintroduced to modern scholarship by this book I'm holding behind it. That's not easy to see on the screen, is it? The top one up there, The Birth of Tragedy, right? By Nietzsche. So the full title is The Birth of Tragedy from the Spirit of Music, and that's really where we find a lengthy account of the relation between Apollo and Dionysus, and there's quite a lot in there about Plato and Socrates. This one from Nietzsche is Nietzsche's first writing, right? So, you know, a lot of people will criticize it for that reason. They'll say, "Oh, well, that's Nietzsche's first writing. You know, don't worry about that one." It's great. Okay, check it out. It's not too long. It's not that tough to read, but I'm really into ancient Greece, though. It's his writing that I'm familiar with that is like about ancient Greece. So we got through all that. Those are my books about ancient Greece. You know, Leo Strauss. I didn't show you some things. See, I didn't really plan out an ending, but anyway, the point is that ancient Greek lives matter. Plato did nothing wrong, right? Leo Strauss for the win. Yeah, and hopefully you can get into ancient Greece, or continue watching my videos, and I will help introduce you to it. But hopefully that survey, just through me holding up a bunch of books, provided with you some idea of the task of studying a subject seriously. Right? Thank you.